So welcome everybody here in person and online. I think we have 280 some people signed up for the live stream as well. So there's a nice crowd here and there's a nice crowd online as well. My name is Bill Cavanaugh. I am the director of the Center for World Catholicism and Intercultural Theology here at DePaul. And we've been doing this World Catholicism Week conference for 15 years on a different theme every year. And usually we go it alone. This year, we are doing it in cooperation with Mission and Ministry. We're doing it with the Holtschneider Chair of Vincentian Studies, with the Vincentian Studies Institute, the Department of Catholic Studies. And so we have a lot of buy-in, as they say. I want to thank especially Father Memo Campusano, Marc Lebeau, and Mathieu Brejon for bringing their resources and energy and ideas into this project as well. It's always good to have someone else to blame if things go wrong. But if things don't go wrong, it's mostly due to Marlon Aguilar and Karen Kraft. Thank you all for being here. So this conference is meant as a kind of family reunion for the Vincentians around the world. And you can see as people are greeting one another, old friends and so on. But it's a family reunion with the serious purpose of thinking about how the Vincentian Charism can contribute to the reform of the church and the reform of the world. So in his apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium, of 10 years ago, in the first year of his pontificate, Pope Francis challenged us to embark on a new chapter of evangelization marked by the joy of the gospel. And rather than a defensive church judging the world, he invites us to have a church of accompaniment, especially the accompaniment of the marginalized, and to share our joy with the world. And this church of the poor means encountering the risen Christ in the experience of sharing life with marginalized people, and thereby creating what Pope Francis calls an ever broader sense of we. And so to do so, the Vincentian community looks back to the founding figures, St. Vincent de Paul, Louise de Marillac, and all of their companions. So in our first roundtable tonight, distinguished historians will discuss the charism of reform among Vincentians across time. And we're going to follow that tomorrow and Saturday with reflections from around the globe on the concept of the poor, the reform of the church, and the contribution that a reformed church can make to the transformation of society. I want, before I introduce our keynote speaker, to recognize a couple of the dignitaries that have slipped into the room without any advance notice. Dean Guillermo, the Dean of the College of Arts and Letters here at DePaul, and Rob, our new president of the university, DePaul University, as of 8 months ago. We haven't actually met yet. So to start this gathering of the Vincentians and friends from around the world, we are especially honored with the presence of Father Tomaž Mavrič, the head of the Vincentian family. He is the Superior General of the Congregation of the Mission and the Daughters of Charity, and as such is the 25th successor to St. Vincent de Paul. And his biography illustrates the global nature of the order and the church more broadly. He was born and raised in Argentina, but joined the Vincentians in Slovenia, where his family was from before they migrated to Argentina after World War II. And Father Tomaž has served in diverse ministries of the Vincentians in Canada, Slovenia, Slovakia, Russia, Ireland, Ukraine, and now he's with us here in Chicago, and we're very happy and honored that you're here with us. So please join me in welcoming Father Tomaž Mavrič.
To start, I would like to thank the organizers, although we already heard that from Mr. William, for inviting me to open this conference, especially with Cavanaugh and the committee of the Center of World Catholicism and Intercultural Theology and the Division of Mission and Ministry of DePaul University. I would like to welcome you all to this conference and express my deep gratitude to some persons who were already mentioned by name. I also repeat some and not others. The president of DePaul University, Rob Manuel, the Assistant General of the Daughters of Charity, Sister Teresa Eke, the Assistant General of the Congregation of the Mission of St. Vincent de Paul, Father Dominic Iolo, the Visitatrix of the Daughters of Charity, Province of St. Louis, Sister Katie Norris, the visitor of the Western Province of the USA of the Congregation of the Mission of St. Vincent de Paul, Father Pat McDavid, and other members of the Vincentian family movement and members of the DePaul community. Probably the most determined factor in Vincent de Paul's personal transformation and development of his own vocation was his spirituality of open eyes, as the Daughters of Charity are calling it today. It was for this reason that he was able to read and understand the signs of the times in the events and relationships of his life and his time. His openness to the calls coming from reality, especially the cries of the poor and the cries of the church, are the very reason for the spiritual, social, and theological passion that makes him a necessary reference of what is expected of people of faith at all times. During my service as Superior General of the Congregation of the Mission of St. Vincent de Paul and the Daughters of Charity, St. Vincent de Paul, I have been underlying and sharing also my personal conviction to describe and call Vincent de Paul a mystic of charity. In an article and then in the book that Father Robert Maloney wrote about this idea, he says, Vincent's brand of mysticism, it's very much his own. He found God in the people and events around him. His visions were Christological. He saw Christ in the face of the poor. Christ led him to the poor, and the poor led him to Christ. when he spoke of the poor and when he spoke of Christ, his words were often ecstatic. He told his priests and brothers, if we ask our Lord, what did you come to do on earth? He answers, to assist the poor. Anything else? To assist the poor. Father Maloney continues saying, for Vincent, the horizontal and the vertical dimensions of spirituality were meshed inseparably. Love of Christ and love of the poor were one. Again and again, he urged his followers not just to act, but also to pray, and not just to pray, but also to act. Another idea that I have been working on most recently is that the Vincentian family is not just a family, but it's really a global movement. A movement in which lay people, consecrated people, and ordained people work together around the same cause, the service of the poor. The theme of this conference has strongly provoked my reflection. I identified in this theme one central idea which can be easily seen and expressed in the ministry of Pope Francis. As he himself has said on different occasions, a poor church for the service of the poor is the most evident expression of the profound reformation of the Catholic Church. This conference we are participating in over the next few days happens in the context of the Church preparing to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the teachings and pontificate of Pope Francis, and while the synodal process advances, is very meaningful in very meaningful ways. I personally have a vivid memory of him before the relics of the heart of St. Vincent de Paul in St. Peter's Square, when we were celebrating the symposium of the Vincentian family in 2017, that was opened on that day with more than 12,000 people. I think in Pope Francis, in his wisdom, in his words, in his teachings, the heart of St. Vincent is strongly beating, close to the heart of the Church. St. Vincent de Paul, our founder, was very interested in the reform of the Catholic Church in the 17th century. His main concern was about the way in which the poor were being left behind or badly assisted in their spiritual and material needs. For him, as for Pope Francis, the reform of the Church was inseparable from the life and the service of the poor. St. Vincent insisted that only the well-prepared clergy in all its dimensions will support and defend the poor in their needs. That is why he developed a line in the identity and mission of the Congregation of the Mission for the formation of clergy, with the conviction that this is a concrete way to make the Church new. I can say at the opening of this conference that both themes in the title of this conference, becoming the Church of the Poor and the Reform of the Church, are in our Vincentian eyes and understandings inseparable. One of the things we are learning during the synodal process through the reflection of the local churches and in the reflection of every continent through the continental process is that the reform of the church is inseparable from the commitment the church has to contribute to the humanization of our world and the social and environmental transformation of our history, so that people and communities in the margins are not left behind, and we care for our common hope. We can easily recognize the post-Vatican II context and the times of Pope Francis as overlapping moments. Francis has in fact taken out of hibernation the most important theological concepts and the dynamisms produced by the Council. Pope Francis has openly affirmed the failure of the pre-Vatican Church's clerical model that has been so difficult to dismantle. He's encouraging the ecclesial community to reaffirm and find ways to implement the central theological principles of the Council. In Gaudium and Spes, we can read that the Church has always had the duty of scrutinizing the signs of the times and of interpreting them in the light of the gospel. Thus, in language intelligible to each generation, she can respond to the perennial questions which men and women ask about this present life and the life to come, and about the relationship of the one to the other. The joys and the hopes, the griefs and the anxieties of the people of this age, especially those who are poor or in any way afflicted, these are the joys and hopes, the griefs and anxieties of the followers of Christ. Francis' pastoral approach has led to a renewed focus on social and environmental justice and the common good in Catholic teachings and practices. As Vincent de Paul did in the 17th century, today the Catholic Church is called to address the needs of the poor and marginalized. The Vincentian family movement is being invited to do this by actively contributing on the creation of a more just and equitable society, and with special emphasis on the care for our common home. This emphatic call to action of Pope Francis impacts the Vincentian spirituality and charism, our identity and mission in profound ways. The coincidence of Pope Francis' teachings with our Vincentian spirit is fascinating and offers us a great opportunity for validation, clarification, and development of our mission and identity as the Vincentian movement continues to be fully committed with God's plan the instilling here and now of his kingdom. Listening to St. Vincent's own words, we are constantly reminded of the very heart and spirit of our identity and mission in these troubling times: to make God known to the poor, to announce Jesus Christ to them, to tell them that the kingdom of heaven is at hand and that it is for the poor. Oh, how great that is! So sublime is it to preach the gospel to the poor that it is above all the office of the Son of God. In the past decades, and especially after the global pandemic, we have seen many social, cultural, economic, and religious transformations. These changes have a great impact on the identity and the mission of the Catholic Church. We could summarize these transformations using two signs of the times that are essential to define the identity and the mission of our own Vincentian movement in the heart of the Church today: the environmental crisis of our planet, which invite us to experience an ecological conversion, Laudato Si, and the growing inequities at all levels, which is inviting us to experience and live, and the ethical conversion, Fratelli Tutti, to commit our resources, structures, and efforts to the common good. I feel the need to connect the theme of this conference with current and relevant teachings of the Church that urgently invite us to transform our understandings and our practices to respond to the calls of God in the signs of the times. The Global Compact on Education, proposed by Pope Francis in 2019 and relaunched in October 2020, is an international initiative which seeks to promote education that is rooted in the values of peace, human rights, care for the environment, and the promotion of dialogue, understanding, and dignity. It is a broad framework to ensure a high-quality education for all, regardless of religious or cultural background, geographical location, or economic standing. The compact includes provisions for safe and secure learning environments, equitable access to quality education, and increased attention to religious and cultural diversity. It also seeks to promote collaboration between institutions, ensure teacher training, and prioritize funding for education. Finally, it calls for a commitment from all governments to use the platform to develop strategies which address social and environmental problems, promote community engagement, and strengthen civil society. This global compact reflects previous teachings and invitations of Pope Francis and connects them to the identity and mission of a church that continues to be committed with the Catholic intellectual tradition nowadays. The encyclicals Laudato Si, May 2015, and Fratelli Tutti, October 2020, contains the calls and proposals of Pope Francis to humanity to protect life and to transform our way of living to ensure the sustainability of life and the survival of our planet. The encyclical Laudato Si encourages people to take responsibility for the earth by calling for greater care for our common home and its creatures, as well as for the most vulnerable. It calls for greater respect for the environment and for those living in poverty, and for the protection of human life through integral ecology. The encyclical also calls for greater collaboration between individuals, cultures, and nations in order to build a better world with a clear goal to promote environmental sustainability. The encyclical proposes some of the main solutions to ongoing social and environmental problems. Integral ecology affirms that humans are part of a broader world and calls for comprehensive solutions which consider the interactions within natural systems themselves and with social systems. I have celebrated with hope that the new mission statement of DePaul University has embraced this call by affirming that through the education and research, the university addresses the greater questions of our day, promoting peaceful, just, and equitable solutions to social and environmental challenges. The encyclical Fratelli Tutti highlights the need for global solidarity and the promotion of a culture of dialogue, inclusion, fraternity, and social friendship to be able to build a culture of encounter to ensure social equity. It emphasizes the importance of striving for peace while recognizing the disparities still present between countries and cultures and between social classes within countries all around the world. This idea is also present in DePaul's mission statement, guided by an ethic of Vincentian personalism and professionalism. DePaul compassionately upholds the dignity of all members of its diverse, multi-faith, and inclusive community. This year, the World Catholicism Week of DePaul University was designed as an opportunity for us to assume the synodal process and the call for a new way of being church in meaningful and structural ways. Pope Francis has proposed internal changes to the Catholic Church to create a more participatory church where a greater emphasis is placed on lay participation in the life, mission, and communion of a church founded in the theological intuition of the Council, the people of God, This proposal for a synodal church has some aspirational components that are embedded in the original and our current understanding of our common spirit in the Vincentian movement. Central role of laity, especially historically marginalized groups, women, youth, people living in poverty, etc. The laity plays a greater role in the life of the church, its apostolic mission, the decision-making processes, the active communion at all levels based on common baptism, ecclesial equity for a real and effective communion. Participatory structures. A new system of structures is developed that better involves the laity in the decision-making processes, with a greater emphasis placed on reciprocal listening, mutuality, co-responsibility, collaboration, and dialogue. Communion and involvement of different cultures. A strong emphasis on fostering unity among the diverse cultural communities that make up the Catholic Church. This includes addressing issues that impact our life and our mission. Interculturality, itinerancy, and active collaboration in new networks committed to the common good of humanity and our planet. Pope Francis said, "I prefer a church which is bruised, hurting, and dirty, because it has been out in the streets, rather than a church which is unhealthy from being confined and clinging to its own security." I'm very thankful for this opportunity, for this conference is giving us. We came together from different places and from several of the branches of the Vincentian family movement. Clearly, we cannot let this moment of ecclesial transformation happen without embracing its impact and commitment in redefining our identity and our mission. We can join the Church in this moment, the boldness of hope. In this very complex moment of our common history, we cannot be naive, and we need to explore new ways for us to reinterpret the very purpose of our common vocation. I invite all to be open to the motions of the Spirit that makes everything new. We need to continue to advocate for structural reforms, upgrading the laity, dismantling, in some cases, excessive clericalism, promoting a more effective presence of women in the Church, working for ecumenism and interreligious dialogue, and fully embracing the multicultural face of a church that is universal in its very essence. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Father Mavrič, for giving us that broad and inspiring vision of what the Vincentian Charism means for us today. And I especially appreciated your comments on connecting it with what we're doing here at DePaul University as a university. So you've certainly given us a lot of things to think about as we move into the conference and try to dig down into some of these themes. We have built into the conference spaces of dialogue. And so generally our sessions are going to include time for people to turn to one another here in person and talk about what they've just heard, and some spaces to do that online as well. But tonight, in addition to feeding the spirit in this way, we also have to feed the body, and our dinner is approaching soon. We have people who have flown in from all around the world and they're hungry. So I think that rather than breaking up into groups right now, I think maybe we've just got about 8 or 9 minutes before we break for dinner. Maybe if you're willing to accept some questions, can we have some questions both here from in person, and people online are welcome to put in questions as well. So if anyone has a question for Father Mavrič, please, you can put it in the Q&A function on the Zoom, or the people here in person can make a question or a comment.
You spoke of increasing female presence in the church. What would that look like?
That's, as we know, it's often mentioned, right? The importance, the why the women cannot be more present. And I think that Pope Francis himself is making steps, concrete steps. It's not just leaving it to words, right? Putting in dicasteries, women, theologians, and other in other areas that they can do as well. I would say better in many cases than men, and that's correct. I think that's also it's a sign that that's the future. I think that why would just bishops or cardinals be in all the leading posts in the, let's say, in the different offices in the Vatican? It was in the past, but I think that the present shows us an inclusive role of women, for example.
Father Tomaž, you mentioned, I think it was that the Pope had said something to the effect of the failure of the clerical model, yet so difficult to dismantle. What do you see as the biggest obstacle to dismantling that clerical model that hasn't worked, obviously?
By what I can, I saw or I heard, it comes many times to power, to control. That was the way, right? It's not just the role of a priest who has a specific, a special role, undoubtedly, right? But I think that that's why a simple example in parishes, right? You will expect normally a parish council. In many cases, there is no council, or if the council really moves the way the the pastor will tell. There's no dialogue, no kind of place to say, okay, you are right. Your ideas are better. Even in some countries, you know that, for example, there was a very tense situation because the clergy was use of that way of living, that they have the religious, the sisters, to clean the rectory, to cook, you know, and you know, and they were doing that for many years, right? And the numbers came down, the things changed. The sisters also got to be more involved in pastoral catechesis, in get help to the needy. The priests, not just one, but the whole, we're talking the diocese, right, and so on. They could not understand. It's not, no, and
So we have a comment and then a couple of questions from the Zoom.
It's not, no, and
So we have a comment and then a couple of questions from the Zoom crowd, if you don't mind. One person said, it seems to me as if I'm sharing in a piece of the Vincentian Synod. Thank you very much. So I thought that was a nice comment. And then there's two questions, somewhat related. One is, from your perspective, is there largely unanimity within the Vincentian family for the vision of the Catholic Church you outlined today in support of Pope Francis? What issues remain difficult within the Vincentian family with regards to this dialogue? And a related question is, does the Church accept and love all marginalized groups, such as or including homosexuals, bisexuals, single mothers? So those are, you know, is there unanimity within the Vincentian family around the vision you laid out? And then a particular question about, does the Church welcome all?
as far as I know, I will say there is because, but at the same time, I say we need to work more and more in acting together. It still remains for our Vincentian family movement. And I use this word now, this phrase, more and more because movement will really, it seems, it really reflects a more active, proactive kind of involvement, right? And we are talking not political at all. We're talking, you know, faith involvement, you know, involvement from the spirit. And the Vincentian family, as we know, is formed by a tree, symbol of a tree with branches, right? And so far we have 165 branches. And now if we, but there are many and so many of thousands and maybe millions that don't belong to any of these 165 branches, but they live their charism and spirituality, the Vincentian charism and spirituality. They are parishioners, they are university faculty, professors, they are hospital staff, they are school teachers and so on, social centers. we don't belong, many don't belong to, but they belong to the wider Vincentian. That's why the Vincentian family movement, I think it's becoming more and more inclusive also of those persons. I think, as I said, more that we have a common vision, but we need to grow in collaboration and effectively acting together, responding to the needs of the world.
If
So
you'll take one more.
Yeah, so we do need to get the speakers some food before too long, but.
One
go
quick
ahead
one
and-
that I think is important and pertinent to this audience in particular. My question is about any organized plan or thought by the congregation of the mission, by the Vincentian priests, to organize, educate, or establish some kind of official movement education system for those of us lay people who proudly call themselves Vincentian and live Vincentian lives and are committed, as my understanding is that the congregation is shrinking for very natural and real reasons. As that happens, have we formalized any plan for how to pass this charism on in an organized, real way to the lay people?
Thank you. Very important. Thank you for this
Yeah.
question. I think for one part, the university I was just speaking about, the university of DePaul has a program of formation of getting to know the charism and spirituality, the Vincentian charism and spirituality. But there is a plan. There is a plan, and it's still in that stage. But I hope that this in the following months will start becoming a reality in a sense. A committee is already prepared that will look at all the programs, all the formation programs that we will able to find around the world. And then we put, for example, we have, you mentioned our congregation, right, of priests and brothers. We have organized online master in Vincentianism or a diploma in Vincentianism.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a 2-year online program. It's a very good program, and there is it's in Spanish, French, and English, in 3 languages. I think more information Father Memo can share about that online, and many of, I think, if not, our confreres participate in those lectures. But we would like to, that's one, but we would like to help to bring it to the grassroots in all the countries where the Vincentian family is present, and we are talking also 165 so far. And to have a school, a course that will last, depending, but really prepare those lay persons, members who will like to get to know more and really be strengthened and be, prepared to take over many positions that presently the consecrated persons are, or participate in any way in other new initiatives. Yes, we are in that, working on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father Mavrič.